I'm going to call out their names. So you better come up when I call your name. All right. Okay. Leading the show there this evening, we got Jim Payne. Yeah. Everybody knows Jim Payne. Wave over wave and everything else. There he is. Coming right along.
Right
you're there. You're there. Okay. Yeah. Very good. Can't see anything. We got Michelle Clemens. Michelle, where are you? Oh, very good. There she is. And we also got from across the bay, across the water, we got the Moriarty brothers. That'll be Aiden and Dave. And here they are, they're coming here now. Yeah, I believe so. So that's quite a mixture. This is going to be a lot of fun. And what have I forgotten? Oh, I'm good. All right. First time so far in this festival. All right, I'm going to leave it to them and see you later. Well, you're in charge, not me.
Okay, you're on. Okay, thank you very much, Steve. And the way this is going to work is that I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to thank our sponsors, partners, and funders. Then I'm going to do maybe 3 or 4 numbers, and then we'll call the others up individually to do their bit. So welcome to the ship, and thanks to the Folk Art Society particularly, because this is normally their folk night. Folk music club night spot here, and they're in in cooperation with the St. John's Storytelling. We've kind of taken it over tonight for the Storytelling Festival. First of all, I want to acknowledge the funders for St. John's Storytelling, the Canada Council for the Arts. Yeah. Here, yeah,
Thanking them for their money.
Building Communities Through Arts and Heritage Program. Arts NL, the City of St. John's, and the Newfoundland and Labrador Cultural Economic Development Program. So thank you very much to all of those funders. And go first. Yeah, that's calling. Sponsors are Perfect Day and Phonomed. Thank you very much to Perfect Day and Phonomed. And partners to the St. John's Storytelling, the Cupid's Legacy Center, the A.C. Hunter Library, the Rooms, the Ship Inn, here we are at the Ship Inn, the Newfoundland Folk Art Society, Newfoundland and Labrador Folk Art Society, shouldn't that be? And the Cox and Palmer Second Space at the LSPU Hall. And all of those places, by the way, are venues that are participating in the St. John's Storytelling Festival this year and have events going on. I'd also like to remind you that St. John's Storytelling hosts a monthly story circle every second Wednesday of the month at the Battery Cafe at 7 p.m. Battery Cafe is just at the bottom of Single Hill. You can't miss it. If you don't see it when you go over that way, go up the hill and come back down again, and it'll be right in front of you. You can't miss it. All are welcome. Whether you want to just sit and listen to stories, or if you want to get up and tell a story, you can do all of that. All right. So I'm going to let's see. What have I got here? I'm going to do a couple songs for you. And it's called, the event is called Songs and Rhymes, by the way. I think I might be the song part of it. Unfortunately, my songs rhyme for the most part. So we fit in here. Now, the first song I'm going to sing, reference to the Newfoundland and Labrador thing here. Sometimes when I'm writing songs, I get an idea for a song, but it's not quite there. I need something else to happen sort of related to it, so that I can kind of figure it out and make a song out of it. And this song is kind of like that. This one, the germ of this song really goes back to after the election last night. The germ of this song really goes back to when Brian Tobin was Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador. As you remember back that far. And one of the things that he did, perhaps the most significant thing he did, in fact, I think it might be the only thing I can remember that he did, was he actually changed the official name of the province from the province of Newfoundland to the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. And I thought that was, way over. As somebody who got in trouble in grade 11 physics class for arguing that Labrador should probably be its own independent and self-governing province or territory, I thought that was a really good idea. So when he did that, I thought, well, it's about time. And there's got to be a song in there somewhere. But I didn't really quite have it. So a few years later, fast forward a few years, and I was in Antarctica. I was on a ship just off Nico Bay on the Antarctic Peninsula. And the ship's doctor was from Toronto. Now, this is not a Toronto bashing story or anything like that. But he came up to me and he said, "You're from Newfoundland, are you?" Actually, what he said was, "You're from Newfoundland, are you?" And so, I went through the whole thing. No, we don't say it that way. We say it rhymes with understand. So you understand. He didn't really get that. So I said, well, what you need to remember is that the emphasis is never on the second syllable. And he kind of started to see where I was going with it. So that was great. So he said, so you're from Newfoundland? I said, yeah. He said, is that an island? And I was kind of took aback, like this guy's a doctor from Toronto, part of the same country, highly educated. I was brought up to have a lot of respect for people with that kind of education. And not being one to give a straight answer when a crooked one will do, I said, well, yes, I said it is an island. I said it's the 16th largest island in the world. And not only is it an island, I said, but we're so far out in the North Atlantic that we're only 11 miles from the coast of France. And I went on then, let him stew on that for a bit. But as it turned out, that was the thing that sort of combined with the change of the province's name to give me this song. Because I went back to work. I went back up on the bridge. Then I was in the chart room that night, and I was kind of going through, looking at the course on the charts, and I just kind of reflected on the vastness of the geography that makes up Newfoundland and Labrador. I wrote this song, and because I was in the chart room, I called it Longitude and Latitude. Longitude and latitude can affect your attitude. Longitude perhaps not so much, but latitude provides a touch of temperature and weather scenes that tell precisely where you've been. If that's Newfoundland or Labrador, how does one ever tell for sure? Cape Race at 45 degrees is quite a ways from Cape Chidley, which measures 60 on the map. No, I'm not setting a trap. I'm not talking cold or warm or where you'd find a tropical storm, but where we sit up on the globe, this oblate spheroid we call home. If Labrador City's where I am, sure that's 1,000 miles from fairyland. It's all okay, fine and dandy, keep the two great regions handy in our own provincial name, but our two regions aren't the same. If I send mail to Lansaloo, just where do I send it to? Newfoundland or Labrador, confuse the postal workers more. Cause Lansaloo is on the coast of Labrador, and that's the most you need to know to make a delivery of mail. When the weather's bivery, you might freeze in Forto in June, while in the Codroy Valley flowers bloom. Likewise, a parcel on the way to Pollard's Point down in White Bay. Why would I include Labrador just to send something down the shore? Sometimes we just write NL, leave folks wondering where the hell is that strange place. Is that a town? On chart or map it can't be found. Strangers just throw up their hands and think it must be Netherlands. Now I've no problem with the names of both to signify the same piece of our shared geography, ecology, topography. But while inclusion keeps a pace, we all belong to a certain place. In Kappa Aiden in the fog, sure Labrador might be a dog, but if I live in Rigolet, I might never have been to the island yet. So longitude determines time, latitude then sets the climb. While Newfoundland is much the wetter, the cold of Labrador's much better. When Newfoundland's a messy stew, see Labrador up on Skidoo. Two great regions south to north, where different languages come forth. You'll never hear anyone ramble on in an Inuktitut on the Avalon. But sure what odds you're bound to find, from Cape Chimney to Cape Pine, the finest people God created, wherever men and women made it, making our way the best we can, right here in Labrador and Newfoundland. Thank you very much. All right. Now, I guess it was about a month ago, I suppose. I was doing the gig up in Brigus. The Bob Bartlett's, the captain lives around the old Captain Bob Bartlett's up. His old schooner of what used to be called the FDM Morrissey, now called the Ernestina, came up from New Bedford, Massachusetts, where she now resides after having a whole lot of work done on her to get ready to go back in the water. So there was a whole series of events going on all that weekend because the ship was in and just celebrating the legacy of Bob Bartlett. And for those of you who don't know, he was an ice captain from Brigus, who really spent most of his working life, most of his exploits were really touted as being American exploits, really, because it was, first of all, it was before we became part of Canada, and most of the financing for a lot of his exploratory trips to the Arctic were financed in the U.S. But he did quite a few sort of discovery-related things. He brought back, this is kind of bizarre when you think about it today, but he brought back, live specimens of polar animals, bears, walrus, muskox, and so on, and other sort of specimens for the Smithsonian museums and that sort of thing. In fact, he was awarded medals of honor by Theodore Roosevelt, by the National Geographic Society, by the Smithsonian Institute, and so on. But one of the most amazing things, you probably, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, you've no doubt heard of Shackleton. And everybody, it's a big deal that Shackleton went across from Elephant Island over to South Georgia. I walked the trail that he took across South Georgia, and it's an amazing thing. But Bartlett also did a similar thing that we don't really hear about very much. He got wrecked on up in Siberia, and they basically took refuge on Wrangel Island, which is an island off the north of Siberia. I flew over it one time. It's one of those desolate places you'd ever see. But he was there, for almost 2 years, and actually walked across the Bering Strait to get help over in Alaska, and went back and rescued everybody and didn't lose anybody on that expedition. So anyway, suffice it to say, he was a pretty good seaman, and there were a number of things written about him. Now I just wanted to make sure I got this right here, because I was looking up information about him. And I came across a poem, or a recitation, really. It was published in the summer-autumn edition of Newfoundland Stories and Ballads, Volume 5, Number 1, in 1958. Probably not in print anymore, but Center for Newfoundland Stories might have it. But it was written by a fellow by the name of A.C. Warnell, Abe Warnell, whom I never had the pleasure of meeting, but I did talk to him on the phone a number of times, because he used to call me up from time to time when he'd hear me on the radio. And he sent me a booklet that he published called The Monarch of the Grump, which had a bunch of his poems and recitations and so on in it. So he wrote this piece called Captain Bob Bartlett, Arctic Adventurer. And I'll see if I can remember it and give it to you here now. Bob Bartlett, born in Brigus, of a bold seafaring breed, became a master mariner, as destiny decreed. He won renown by following the brave explorer's role, when Perry used his services to reach the northern pole. The briny spray of Turnavik he faced in early youth. While fishing with his family there, he learnt the ocean's truth. While wrestling with the ropes and lines, the windlass oars and sails, his strong physique developed to withstand the Arctic gales. In early manhood days, he showed great promise of that fame that history, in later years, accorded Bartlett's name. He furnished specimens for museums very worthwhile. He furnished for museums specimens worthwhile, and scientific data for the hydrographic file. His little ship, the Morrissey, possessed his heart and mind, as gracefully she sailed along, close-hauled against the wind. He cheered her on with every wave that broke across her bow, as through the hissing foam he watched his vessel swiftly plow. The gulls which hovered over him in the whistling Arctic gales, the bullbirds, turs, and kittiwakes, the porpoises and whales, the bosun, bach, and curlew, the phalarope and plover, were frolicsome companions to this North Atlantic rover. But the winter squalls, the rain and fog, the drizzle, sleet, and snow, the frothy-lipped northeaster, the close-packed Arctic floe, the rocks and shoals, the treacherous tides, the rough, forbidding shore, present their dangerous challenges to Bartlett nevermore. The sealing ships, whose bloody decks betoken paying trips, as every spring they wriggled through the ice field's closest grips. The Nimrod, Neptune, Algerine, the Bonaventure, Kite, no more with Bartlett on the bridge shall pass the harbor light. Makovic, Eilit, Canglerpit, Cape Harrison, and Nain shall never see our Newfoundland adventurer again. For now beneath his native sod there lies in sacred trust a legacy immortal, Bob Bartlett's honored dust. So, there's been a lot of stories told and written here at the Ship Inn. And this next song, once you can take me down in the monitor there a bit, please. Back in, I guess it was, 40 years or so ago now, I was one of the first sort of professional theater shows I did in St. John's called Terrace de Bacalhau. It was really a show, it was supposed to be a show about the Portuguese fishermen who had been coming to Newfoundland for, nearly 500 years. And, we used to see them around St. John's, of course, all these, anytime you'd be out, especially downtown. But I was just kind of back from the mainland, and I walked into the LSP hall one day, and somebody said to me, Jim, do you know any musicians? And I said, well, I'm a musician. You're hired, just like that. So I never even had to do an audition. But it turned out to be a really interesting process because not only did we, see the sun come up many times from the decks of Portuguese boats down here, but we also got to know a lot of the people in St. John's who spent time with the Portuguese, especially the women who went out with them. And a lot of the, they'd be called sex workers now, but they had other names for them then. But they preferred the Portuguese. Like they say, they charged everybody else, but they went with the Portuguese for free because the Portuguese treated them like queens. And we discovered a whole little subculture here in the east end of St. John's, with youngsters with, curly hair and Portuguese names and stuff like that. And but sometimes we'd be working over at the hall and we kind of had no ideas coming, so we just come over here and sit down. It's amazing, once you 5 or 6 people, 6 or 7 people, and everybody's got a pint, and the ideas start flowing again. So a lot of stuff we kind of wrote here, and then sometimes we went on to the alley pub over here, which is open all night. So, but one of the people I worked with in the show was Janice Spence, the late Janice Spence, actress, writer, director. And Janice and I wrote a number of songs together, not just for that show, but for other things as well. And this is one that we wrote together that was really about the women who went to the Portuguese sailors. It's called Saltwater Charlie, which is one of the names that the locals gave to the women who worked the waterfronts. She was only a saltwater Charlie, but a queen to the Portuguese. In a dress of chiffon and a glass of John Barley, she dreamt of a life of ease. In the warmth of her bed in the dark of night, she'd hold them and kiss them and cry. Carlos, Manuel, Francesco, Miguel, I need you, don't leave me, I'll die. I'll marry Miguel. All the lies that he tells, as he held me and called me his own, he kissed my soft cheek. Sweet words he would speak, mi amore, he'd moan. She was only a finger-clear girl, but a lady to the boys at the bar. With a twirl and a turn, she'd dance and she'd yearn for a sailor to take her afar. I'll marry Louise. Oh, the sweet dreams of peace, as he gently caressed my brown hair. My gown is all ready. Is your arm steady? His answer dispelled my despair. When the piers in the harbor are empty, no velvet-eyed boys at the dusk, she'd squat down the crosses, forgetting her losses with men who knew nothing but lust. I'll marry Jose. He'll take me away to Coimbra, Lisboa, or Porto, where the scent of red roses sand warm beneath my feet. We'll drift till the red sun sinks low. She was only a saltwater Charlie, but a queen to the Portuguese. In a dress of chiffon and a glass of John Barley, she dreamt of a life of ease. I might also mention, by the way, that I meant to do before, that crosses, where the parking lot is down there, not sort of across from the Haymarket Square, that's where crosses was, and the Stardust used to be up just this side of the War Memorial, on the south side of the street, where all the Portuguese sailors used to, and other sailors used to hang out, across from the King George V Institute, really. I'm going to do one more song now before we pick up one of our special guests. And this one, I don't really say much about this. It's called Live Like a Bayman. And, I'm from North Dane Bay myself. And I had the neighbors, one across the street from me who was from Trapassi, and one next door who was from Catalina. And I kind of wrote this about the three of us, really. I'm on the horns of a dilemma. I really don't know what to do. I'm just at the end of my tether. My troubles are more than a few. I could take refuge in the bottle, seeking my sorrows to drown. 'Cause I want to live like a bayman, but unfortunately I live in town. I'm like a caged animal, oh what a sin. That kid Mount Road overpass got me barred in. My street, it has too many people. It's not what I'm used to at all. And they call a constabulary on me when I get out my gun in the fire. They don't understand the procedure. How else do a man get his moves? There's a car up on blocks in the driveway, and 2 or 3 dogs running loose. I take them out with me to shoot a few hares, while townies are busy all with their careers. A shed to a Payne is vital. Where else can a man keep his toys? When I have a few beer with me buddies, the neighbors complain of the noise. But I keep my machines in good order. I can't fathom the glare in their eye. When I get me old snow machine started once a week in the month of July. They all call me Baywop when I stop for a chat, but I bet they can't put the arse back in the can. We used to go camp in the summer with some of our friends from the bay. To the gravel pits we take the camper and park on the tune for a day. We'd party all night on the weekends. On Sundays we'd have the big scar. But the government ended the good times when they barred all the gravel pits off. Oh, to be in the woods for a nice cup of tea. Life's simple pleasures for a baby like me. Now the mountains of tailings pile higher, and the paper mills poison the brooks. Ye bathing who mind your own business, sure the government they'll treat you like crooks. They drag you to town from the outports, where you can't even claim a few splits. While townies flush into the harbor, we can't go in the woods for a trout, or a duck, or a few cords of wood. The life of a Payne I'd live if I could. Oh, thank you very much. All right, well, we got the first of our special guests coming up right now, and I'd like to bring him up here. Dave Moriarty was born and raised in Harbor Grace, one of 14 youngsters. Imagine. He served 38 plus years in the Canadian Forces with 2 operational tours in Afghanistan and the Gulf War, and numerous operational tours worldwide. Dave is a father of 4, a grandfather to 5. He's performed at the St. John's Storytellers Night back in 23. He's fresh off the Rocky Harbour Storytellers Festival from last month. And he's hosted the monthly Freshwater Coffee House musical night for the past 5 years. He also plays guitar with the local freshwater band Sweet Trinity. Please welcome Dave Moriarty.
All right. Well, hello. My God Almighty, here at the ship. Well. First time I was here at the ship was September 26, 1975. And that was the night before I left to go in the military. And I had 2 fellows with me. One from, this is not the story I'm going to tell either, but a fellow from Galdas, Kevin King, another fellow from, I believe it was from Francois, Snook. And there was 4 or 5 of us, and they put us up in a hotel, and we would leave for Halifax in the morning. And then what they do? They gave us $200 advance against our pay. Sweet mother of Jesus. I woke up in Halifax with 11 cents in my pocket. And that was the start of 38 years of fun. But anyway, that's a whole different story. But the story I want to tell you tonight, as Jim said, I come from a big family. And my mother was staunch Roman Catholic. Of course, no birth control, just have as many youngsters as you can possibly have, right? The old man would wore out, but that's, again, another story, right? But mother ran the house. Dad worked around and did whatever dads do, but mother ran the house. And the 2 things that she hated, absolutely hated, was lying and stealing. Now, as one of 7 boys growing up, in what Ray Guy once referred to as the juvenile delinquents of the outports, right? I like to think of us really as free-range youngsters, because mother had enough to do. She didn't want the youngsters in the house all day, so get out, come back when you're hungry, and then come back for the night to be counted and go to pump. That was pretty much the extent of it, right? She had a tight grip on the girls, you know, but she let the boys sort of roam free. But here we are now, it's in the summertime, and it's coming late on summer, so you got all your trouting done, you got all the stuff done that you want to do, and you're looking for something now to fill the rest of that last couple of weeks. You got to jam it all in before you shove it back into school, which is what I hate, right? So what to do? Well, the thing to go doing was, it was too early to be sealed up a bonfire, so it was too early and too late to do anything like trouting. There's no trout left anymore. So we decided that we'd go down and go, as we said, bucking apples, stealing apples. Okay? So there was one particular place down in Harbour Grace, and he's dead and gone now, and he'll forgive me, Gil Parsons. And we had crab apples, we had green apples, but he had the sweetest, juiciest apples. We watched them from the spring of the year when the flowers first came on, and we watched them grow all spring and all summer, and we were looking in over the fence, and we were thinking, boy, Jesus, when the fall comes, we're having them, right? Now, remember about the lying and stealing, all right? So, here we go. Myself and 3 or 4 of my brothers, one of them happened to be here tonight, but anyway, and some friends, we decided to go and do what I found out later on was called a recce when I got in the military, and time spent on recce is seldom wasted. So you go down and you check the place out, you see where the how to get in over the fences and stuff like that. We knew all that. So the time come for the raid. So down we go, right down across Harvey Street, you know, half ninja, whatever. The first barrier he had to his apple tree was about an 8 or 9 foot fence, a wooden fence, and she was smooth on the outside with runners on the inside. Well, for a bunch of outport Newfoundland juvenile delinquents, that was nothing. Getting over that was like getting in, right? But then, tied to the base of the tree, he had the dog on a chain about 10 feet long. So, got to do something about the dog. Yeah, okay, so, but I didn't know at the time, but I was in training for the military. I just didn't know it yet, right? So, okay, we got to take care of the dog. So, okay, I can take care of the dog. I had to be mind what I'm going to do with the dog, right? So then, along the bottom of the apple tree, he had a string of barbed wire. Right? He didn't want us up in that tree. Right? Now, we knew about the salt gun. Right? He had that stuff up in the corner of the house, up by the door. But that's okay. We figured, you know, his aim wasn't all that good. You're getting it old, so we get around that. So the time came, we go down, and young fellas jump up on your back, over the fence. I got in, I had a flat board about that long, and I put a big thing of dog food on it. Again, going back to the thing I didn't know I was going to be, I was doing combat crawl. Across the yard, up to the dog was growling at me, but I'm holding this out. And I go all around that tree. And of course the chain gets smaller and tighter and tighter. I give the dog that much, and then I let him go at the food. Dog is taken care of, no problem. Up under the tree, get up under that string of barbed wire, and got 4 fellas up in the tree. No problem. So far, everything's going according to plan. Right? And then, whack, the door slaps open. Now we hear it, you little bastard, I'm going to... And with that, boom, right? Up goes the salt gun, top to the trees going, and we're stuffing apples into our coats and down our sleeves, you know. Bail out, boys, shotgun, right? So we bail out over the first thing, back to the fence, right? Brother is up in the tree hauling down them big ones. I can still see him now, and he's heaving them down to us, right? He makes the jump, but our recce was not complete because we missed the clothesline. That was hooked to the tree and to the house, and the pulley was at the house, so she was well fastened to the tree, right? Brother made the jump, and when he did, he came down across the clothesline, okay? One leg out there, all right? You know, and he slid. Now that was plastic coated, eh? Okay? So it was, as he went down, it burned through the jeans, right up into the parts. Right? Oh the Lord. And he fell off the clothesline. Now, we were all rising to the fence, and he was reloading the shotgun. But I looked back, again,
military training that I didn't know I was going to need yet kicked in. Can't leave him there because if he gets caught, we're all caught. So back we go. Grab brother, haul him to the fence, get him up over the fence. Now he can't walk. I mean, he's like, I'm cut in half. Right? We get him over the fence, we get him back up the hill. So where are we going to go? We're going to go home because mother knows how to fix it. So we stopped halfway up the hill, and I said, brother, let me have a look. He said, no, don't touch me, don't touch me, Jesus, don't touch me. He said, I'm bleeding, like that. And he was too. Holy dancing, Jesus, what are we going to do now, right? Well, gotta go home. So we go home, go in the house. Now, you take 4 or 5 or 6 youngsters coming in the house, wild puffing, and some of us look at the apples up the tree, right? Because we're not very smart, right? The mother's in the kitchen. She's baking a bit of bread, doing what mothers do, right? And all of a sudden, we're in there, and she goes, what's going on? How come you're all in the house this time of day? Brother's hurt. Oh, how did he get hurt? He jumped out of a tree. Oh, did he break his leg? No. Is he caught? Yeah, sort of. Oh, and wait, and now brother's over there. He's like this, like that. He won't talk to nobody, right? She said, "Where are you hurt?" I'm okay. Where are you hurt? Me parts, mother. She said, "What are you talking with your parts?" Me bird. What's wrong with your bird? I think it's gone. What do you mean? You think it's gone? Let me see. No, mother. She said, for the love of God. She said, look. She said, I had 14. She said, you think I've never seen one of them before? Let me see. She looks at it. Now, we're all lined up. We're frightened to death. We don't know what's going to happen here, right? And mother said, oh, she said, and what were you doing up the tree? Looking around. What tree were you up in? What tree were you up in? What tree? Nobody's gonna say a word. What tree were you up in? What tree were you up in? Coming from my younger brother. What tree were you up in? Gil Parsons's. Oh, she said, what were you doing Gil Parsons' tree? Steal now. We all looked at him. You're dead. Brother's going to die anyway. He's bleeding to death. You're dead. We're killing you. Right? We're killing you. I never said that because mother would have pounded the whole work. She said, oh, so you were stealing apples. And then you come home here and lie about it. She said, you know it, but I think about stealing and lying, don't you? Yeah. Well, she said, let me have a look. Let me deal with your brother first. And then I'll deal with you. And we all stand there frightened to death, right? She goes over to buddy, she said, let me see. No, mother, I'm all right. Let me see. So she stands up there. She looks. Whoa. She walks over to the medicine cabinet that was on the wall by the side of the stove, right? And she took something down out of it. And we didn't see what she was doing. And she turned around and she shook something into her hand, you know, and then she come over and she said, let me see now. So brother was standing up like this, and she looked and she had this on her hand and she slobbed it up between his legs like that. When he straightened up, Jesus, like that, right? And we thought she killed him. He flopped back on the daybed and he started to twitch and everything, right? Now we're frightened to death. We're next. Whatever in the name of Jesus she put on him, right? We're next. She stood up and she said, mine ours liniment, she said, a cure for everything, including stealing and lying. And that's the true story.
Okay, I guess I'll be feeling that one for a while. But I know what you mean, Dave. We're only allowed in the house to eat and sleep ourselves. All right. Thank you very much. Aiden's going to be back, by the way, in the second half of the program here. And now it's time to bring up our next guest, Michelle Clemens, a writer and producer, who has had a really good year, actually. She published her first novel, The Girls of Belvedere, in May 2025. And get this now, It's worth applauding for sure. But it's on its third printing in less than 6 months. So that's really fantastic.
And it's for sale here tonight.
And for sale here tonight, all right. And that's a nice way to get a little plug in that she does have some books here tonight. So have a look at them before you go. Michelle loves the craft of storytelling and shares her personal folk and genre stories while giving bus tours of the province with McCarthy's Party. She's been a storyteller since 2021, it says here, but I'm willing to bet that she's been a storyteller from the time she could talk. Because, we tell stories all the time without even thinking of ourselves as storytellers, right? We have conversations with each other. Her short story, Murder on Millbank, won a place at the Memorial University's Writers NL Storytelling event at the Sparks Festival. Her essay, The Christmas Stocking, was published in Writers NL's e-zine, which you can find on loan at michelleclemens.ca. She's hosted several events for St. John's Storytelling and performed at the annual festivals. In 2024, she co-produced How to Write a Narrative, an instructional video for St. John's Storytelling and the Department of Education. Would you please welcome Michelle Clemens?
There we go. Let me see. No, that's good. Just a little tilt.
Okay.
It's on a tilt. So you talk about the ship. I still call it the ship in. I don't know who else calls it the ship in. I tried to find the ship in on Google and it was no longer there. It's very frightening for me. My son is actually here tonight. He's helping sell the books. And Yes, my son. Yes, there you go. And I made my first real true confession to my son. This was the place where your mother underage drank. So it's been a learning lesson for him. So tonight, as said, I published my first novel in May with Michael Press. And yes, I do. I've been a storyteller probably most of my life. I inherited the skill from my mother, who never put much pen to paper, but she was a great oral storyteller. She was the gal on the street that all the kids surrounded, those little narrow streets when there was, hordes of children running about, smoke in one hand, cup of tea in the other, and she would entertain us all night. So The Girls of Belvedere is really her story. Her and her sisters attended Belvedere Orphanage in the 40s and the 50s. So when you're writing a novel, it could be 500 pages, and you're trying to trim and make decisions about which ones are going to go in and which ones are going to go out. So when this opportunity came up to tell you a story tonight, I was thinking, it's October. It's awful close to Halloween. Mm-hmm. So as you can imagine, a Belvedere orphanage would have a ghost story or two. So I touched on a little bit of ghost story in the book, so I figured, why not have at it tonight, okay? So, in honor of Halloween. So this story focuses is on the youngest girl. Her name is Ruth Aiden. She was the last of the 3 sisters to enter the orphanage. And I'm just going to stop. So her older sisters, Hannah and Kitty, were established. They had their group of friends. They had people to hang around with. But she was a very shy, timid girl. And worse than that, she had a stutter. And of course, it didn't take long before the other girls realized that she had a stutter. And so of course they asked her to do a little tongue twister like she shall stand by the seashore. But of course that would get a good laugh. And they even asked her, so Ruthie, say Ruthie, Ruthie. And she would go, and as you can imagine, this little tyke had very few friends. So she used to go on the 3rd floor of the orphanage, and it was where the dormer roof met the stairs, and she would sort of tuck herself in under there and try to figure out how she was going to do Cat's Cradle by herself. And so one afternoon she was doing Cat's Cradle and wishing she had a friend, and she was just fluffing back her hair because there was this kind of cold breeze, and she looked around. And the window was still shut tight. Oh, and all of a sudden, right in front of her, was this little blonde girl, almost her age. And she had her hair tied back in a ponytail. And she looked a lot like her, but she had kind of a longer uniform, and she had a fussy bow tied over her shirt. And she said, hello? And the other girl said, hi, my name is Hope, what's your name? And she said, Ruthie. And the little girl made no fun of her stutter. And she said, oh, my name is Hope. And Ruthie said, are you new here? And she said, oh no, it seems I've been here ever so long. Can I play cat's cradle with you? She nodded yes. And so Hope dove into playing this game with cat's cradle, and she was really super fast. And they were, you know how it works, ladies, you know, pull and tug and pull. And they were going so super fast that they started to giggle and they started to laugh. And all of a sudden, they heard the sound of a hard leather shoe on the hardwood floors. Ruthie looked around, and there was Sister charging down the hall, and she went to tell her friend to run away, but Hope was already gone. Well, Sister came up and grabbed her by her shirt, pointed her big old finger in her nose, and said, how dare you disturb the peace of the sisters while they are at prayer? How dare you? And then Ruthie, well, of course her heart started beating, and her face turned red, and her stomach got queasy, and she lifted up her hands and had the twine from the cat's cradle in her hands, and she tried to say, Sister, I'm just playing cat's cradle with my new friend Hope. And of course, her mouth was glued shut, and all she could say was, And Sister looked at her and said, don't you dare grunt at me like some animal. Tell me what it is that you said. You should be doing your homework. You should be doing your studies. And once again, Ruthie just lifted her hands and pried open her mouth and said, up. Well, that was it. Sister grabbed her by her shirt, dragged her across the hallway, down the stairs, and into the chapel. And she sat her on a pew and said, you will say 10 Hail Marys and a glory be to the Father. Oh my God, how could you possibly say one? And Sister turned around, there was a young nun at the altar, fixing the cloth and resetting the candles. And she said, you come over here, and you sit with her. I don't care if it takes all night. That child will say 10 Hail Marys. And off she flew out the door. Well, the young nun and little Ruthie sat there in the pew and tried, and the two of them were so exhausted from the efforts of both of them begging for this torture to end. And suddenly, the door to the chapel crashed open, and in swooshed the wind, and it knocked out the lights and crashed down the candles. And up in the darkness rose the altar cloth, up, and hovered above, and suddenly slashed across the room and cracked the nun right across her back. She got such a fright, she scooped up little Ruthie in her arms, and she dashed back to the convent door. She laid the child down and exited behind a heavy oak door and slammed it shut. Ruth just sat there. She wouldn't go anywhere without permission. She was wondering how much more trouble she would be in. But time passed, and gradually and slowly her eyes began to fade, and the tension left her body. And you know that time between darkness and light, between sleep and awake, when you hear all kinds of strange things? She heard the voice of her friend say, that's okay, Ruthie. I always look after my friends. And off she drifted to sleep. Well, the next day she was expected to be hauled into Sister Mary's office, you know, the head of the school, but nothing happened. And so she decided to try to look for her friend Hope. And she searched and she asked and she quietly inquired, and well, it's getting ridiculous. Everybody was just saying, oh, leave it alone. There's no hope in this place. Oh, right? Anyway, she asked her big sister, Kitty, about it, and Kitty said, look, just go play with your imaginary friend. She doesn't exist. So Ruthie, well, okay, she went back to the 3rd floor, and she sat in the exact same spot that she sat before. And she closed her eyes and opened them up again, and there was Hope. What are we going to play today? Well, she said, I brought my jacks. And so they played 5s, 10s, 15s. You know how it goes. And then they decided to play some more Cat's Cradle, and finally they started a clapping rhyme. When Helen had a steamboat and a bell. When Helen went to heaven, the steamboat went to hell. Oh, Arthur. Well, both girls giggled, because they said hell. Well, actually, Hope laughed a whole lot more. Anyway, they met on a regular basis up there 2 or 3 times a week and played some games. And it was about, I think, October, as summer and fall was entering winter, and the leaves were shedding their trees. So the trees were shedding their leaves, and the wind was causing the branches to sway and dance. The girls thought, let's dance with the trees. And so they joined hands, and they spun, and they swayed, and they laughed, and they giggled. They were so busy playing that they didn't hear the slap of the shoes against the hardwood floors. Suddenly, Ruth was spun around, and she was grabbed by the shirt, and her words stopped behind her teeth, and her breath could barely cross her tongue. But Sister's hands could grab, and Sister's tongue could wag, and Sister's lungs filled with air and said, how dare you? You want to make noise? You want to dance? You want to play on the Sabbath day? Well, you're going to go in the cupboard. And sure enough, just under the dormer window to the side was a tiny little cupboard, only with enough room to put a tiny little child in the dark. Now, Ruthie knew all about this because the very first week she arrived at the orphanage, she was sent there. And so she unlocked the door, pushed her just past the threshold, and locked it up again. Little Ruthie put her hands against the ceiling and closed her eyes and prayed that the little mice and all the spiders would stay away. And she prayed, and she started to cry and whimper. And she knew that she would only get in more trouble if she made a noise, so she put her very fist into her mouth. And she started to sing her own song, trying to distract herself. And then she heard the song. Joined her was the voice of her little friend Hope, singing, hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. And that sweet voice somehow helped her relax and fall asleep. And when Ruthie was asleep, Hope had a plan. She crossed the hallway. She went down the stairs. She went to the huge oak convent door, and she pushed right through it. She flew down the hallway and stood in front of the cell of Sister, and pushed her hand against the door and clicked open. And she crossed until she was over the bed of Sister Bernadette. And she took her hands and spread them wide and reached down and grabbed a hold of her very blankets and very sheets, and she pushed down. She pushed down so hard that Sister's eyes flew open. She could not catch her breath. She could not force the breath out of her lungs. All she could do was go, ah, ah, ah. And Hope leaned over her, closer and closer and closer till they were almost touching. And she breathed the cold air down her lungs. And Sister's eyes opened wide. There was a flicker of recognition. And she started to pray inside of her head, pray to God to release her from this demon that had her by her chest. And a voice rose over her prayers and said, how dare you? How dare you trap children in closets and capture them in their bed and take away their hopes and create fear? And Sister looked again into the eyes of this demon that was in front of her face and realized, oh my God, realized this looked like a child from long ago, a child who was supposedly died of scarlet fever. And yet there were whispers in the infirmary. There was talk in the hallways. And there were stories that passed through the graveyard of another child who died with a different hand. And Sister, in that very moment, she had a hand in the death of that child. And over her fear that rose from her chest, the voice of Hope pushed into her mind again and said, live or die. Well, upstairs on the third floor, she was inside, trapped still, but she heard the voice of her sister Kitty, and Kitty had arrived with every tool she could possibly find. She had a fork and a knife and a file, and she started to dig at the hinges that held the door in place and tried to pick the lock, and she worked feverishly until she, too, heard the slap of the shoes behind her. And she turned and she saw Sister lording over her, and she was trying to think, Kitty was trying to think of something that would end this torture, end this punishment. And Sister just went. And she reached in and got her great ring of keys and leaned forward and unlocked the cupboard door. And Ruthie fell into her arms and she held her close. And all Sister did was turn and walk away. Well, it took, as you can imagine, days for Ruthie and Kitty and all of her sister Hannah to get over this moment that happened that night, that terrible night. And about 2 days later, there was a special assembly, and all the children gathered in the assembly to listen to what the news was. It was announced that one of the nuns in the convent was leaving. She was going to Europe, to a very special convent that stayed away from all public life and was secluded with prayers and peace. And a lot of the little girls were just, ooh, okay. There was no tears, regret, no sadness in the room. So after the assembly was over, the three sisters decided to go for a walk. And a strange compulsion came over Ruthie, and she walked past the grounds of the orphanage, and she went into the graveyard that was right next door. And she seemed to be compelled to walk in the direction that her sister Hannah said, don't be stirred, the ghosts are come back. But no way, she was going over 5 rows, up 2, until she stood in front of a very small grave outlined in a white series of stones. And one of those monuments that often sat on the grave of a child, at the top there was an angel kneeling with a soft face. And Ruthie looked into that face and she recognized the face of her friend Hope. And by this time, Kitty had caught up with her and Hannah on the other side, and they read the inscription: to a little girl lost too soon, to a darling granddaughter, Hope Walsh. And for the first time in a very long time, Ruth spoke without a stutter, without a fear. And she said to her little friend, "Thank you, Hope, for being my friend." The 3 sisters turned around and exited the graveyard, and the older sister looked across over the head of little Ruthie to Hannah and said, "I think Hope knew that we were not doing right by our sister, and it's time we started looking after her." And Ruthie closed her eyes, and she heard a little whisper only she could hear. And Hope said, "I always look out for my friends."
Michelle Clemens, everyone. Great story, Michelle. Yeah, fantastic. And Michelle won't be back in the second half, so I would suggest if you want more of Michelle's work, she's got some books here tonight. And if you don't get them tonight, you can, I'm sure, find them at some of the local bookstores. Only 70 shopping days left for Christmas, you know. So you might want to get on top of that. Now we've got another Moriarty coming up to the stage. Brother to Dave. This is Aiden. I don't know. I thought first they were a brother act, you know, but I grew up with brothers, so I can understand why they don't want to do anything together. But Aiden is a great lover of Robert Service ballads and stories. He lived in Labrador City for a while and was involved in a bunch of Irish plays and screech-ins and so on to raise funds for charitable causes. He's recited at St. John's Storytelling at the Battery Cafe, actually with David. Okay, so they do stuff together. He's performed at various coffee houses in Conception Bay, St. Paul's, and Harbour Grace, and the one in Freshwater as well. He has also worked with David as a duo at the Princess Sheila Magira Theatre in Carbonera. An active supporter of the Harbour Grace, the St. Vincent de Paul Food Bank. He also did several outdoor virtual pieces with his brother David during the COVID shutdown. So please welcome Aiden Moriarty.
summer's evening, and a goodly crowd was there, which nigh near filled Joe's bar room on the corner of the square. And as songs and witty stories came floating through the door, a vagabond crept slowly in and posed upon the floor. Where did it come from? Someone said. The wind has blown it in. What does it want? Another cried. Some whiskey, rum, or gin? Here, Toby, sick him. If your stomach's equal to the work, I wouldn't touch him with a fork. He's as filthy as the dirt. Now all this badinage the poor wretch took, but stifled with grace. In fact, he smiled, as though he thought he'd struck the proper place. Come, boys, I know it is kindly hearts among so good a crowd. Why, to be in such fine company, 'twould make a deacon proud. Give me a drink. That's what I want. I'm at a fund, you know. But when I had cash to treat the gang, this hand was never slow. But you laugh, as though you think this pocket never held a sou. But I was fixed as well, my boys, as any one of you. There, thanks. That raised me nicely. God bless you one and all. The next time I pass this good saloon, I'll make another call. Give you a song. No, I can't do that. My singing days are past. My voice is cracked. My throat's worn out. And my lungs are going fast. Say, give me another whiskey, and I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll tell you a funny story. And in fact, I promise, too, that I ever was a decent man. Not one of you would think. But I was some 4 or 5 years back. Say, give us another drink. Fill her up, Joe. I want to put some life into my frame. Such little drinks to a bum like me, I'm miserably tame. 5 fingers. There, that's this scheme. And cork and whiskey, too. Well, here's luck, boys. And landlord, my best regards to you. Say, boys, you treated me pretty kindly. And I'd like to tell you how I came to be the dirty sap you see before you now. As I told you before, I was once a man of muscle, flame, and health. And but for a blunder, I'd have made considerable wealth. You see, I was a painter. Not one that dabbed on bricks and wood, but an artiste. And for my age, I was rated pretty good. I worked hard at my canvas, and I was bidding fair to rise. For gradually, I saw the star of fame before my eyes. I've made a picture, perhaps you've seen. 'Tis called The Chase of Fame. It brought me £1,500 and added to my name. It was then I met a woman. Now comes the funny part. With eyes that petrified my brain and sank into my heart. Why don't you laugh? It's funny that the vagabond you see could ever love a woman and expect her love for me. But to so, and for a month or two, her smiles were freely given. And every time her lips touched mine, I thought I was in heaven. Say, boys, have you ever met a woman for whom your soul you give? With a form like Venice di Milo, too beautiful to live, with eyes like the purest of diamonds, and a wealth of chestnut hair? If so, 'twas she, for there never was another half so fair. I was working on a portrait one afternoon in May of a fair haired boy, a friend of mine who lived across the way. And Madeline admired it. And much to my surprise, said she'd like to know the man who had such dreamy eyes. Well, it didn't take long to know him. And before the month had flown, my friend had stole my darling, and I was left alone. And in a year of misery passed above my head, the jewel that I had treasured so had tarnished and was dead. That's why I took to drink, boys. What? I never saw you smile. I thought you'd be amused and laughing all the while. Say, friend, I see a teardrop in your eye. Come, laugh like me. Sure, it's only babes and women that should cry. Say, boys, if you'll give me one more whiskey, I'll really be glad. And I'll draw right here a picture of the face that drove me mad. Give me that chalk with which you mark the baseball score, and you shall see the lovely Madeline upon the barroom floor. Another drink, and with chalk in hand, the vagabond began to sketch a face that well might buy the soul of any man. And as he placed another lock upon that shapely head, with a fearful shriek, ah! He leaped and fell across the picture, dead.
Wow.
I want to thank Mr. Jim Payne for hosting tonight. I thank Elaine and her crew for inviting me to have a bit of poetry. And if they don't kick me out in the first half, maybe I'll get to do another one.
Aiden Moriarty and his brother Dave was the bartender. Thanks very much, you guys. We're going to take a short intermission. Just one thing I want to do before that. For any of you who have been around to the St. John's Storytelling Festival or some of the events, a lot of the musical events around town, the folk fest and the like, you might have seen an unobtrusive fellow going around taking a whole lot of photographs. His name is Alex Ree, and Alex is here tonight, and it's his birthday. He's a great guy. He's very generous with his photographs. He always sends them on to the artist whose photos he takes. I'd like you to join me in singing Happy Birthday to Alex here tonight. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Alex. Happy birthday to you.
great one, Alex. Thanks.
Glad you're here tonight. That's great. Okay, folks, we're going to take a short intermission now for 15 minutes or so, and we'll be back with the second half right after that. Thank you. might think I'm bringing on the sauce here tonight, but it's time to draw for the door prize. And the door prize, I'll also mention, by the way, that there's a whole bunch of merch laid out down there on the pool table. Michelle's books are down there. The St. John's Storytelling has a bunch of stuff as well, including a bunch of T-shirts. And the winner of the door prize is that if you have the winning ticket number, you can take your pick of the T-shirts. So I'm going to go deep into the jug here, and let's see what I come up with. All right. The last 3 digits are 152. 152. Sounds like we have a winner.
Somebody won.
152. All right. Congratulations. All the way from Winnipeg. Fantastic.
Oh, I hope so. Wait, I brought
Oh, you have it upside down. You know? Wrong ticket. Should I draw another or what? No, okay, no. I was just at the wrong ticket. There you go. You keep trying. Is that the right one? I'm sure you don't have to go back there.
That's a prairie thing.
Thank you. You can go down to the pool table. Just go down to the pool table and take your pick of tickets. All the way from Winnipeg. That's right. I hear, St. John's Storytelling does an amazing job of promotion because I heard at the break there that we also have a visiting couple from Malta who are here tonight. I guess they saw a poster on the street or something in Malta and decided to come over for the festival. But welcome. It's great to have you here from one island to another. And now that I've got this big jug, it reminds me of recitation. So maybe I'll just do it for you here. It was a fine time we had down at Grogan's. And the 5 of us slept not a wink, with the fiddle to stir up our brogue and plenty of toddy to drink. Now the grog was as free as the air is, and we managed to put it away. We whistled and sung like canaries. Who was the 5, did you say? Well, myself was 1, Mike Strike was 2, Tim Corrigan was 3, the 2 Grogans was 4. I thought it was 5. We played a game of cards. Mike was beaten. Corrigan caught him at cheating. They took off their coats without waiting and went at it like dogs in the street. Our blood got stirred up by their brawling, and the fight soon turned into a fray. The 5 of us were pushing and howling. Who was the 5, did you say? Well, Mike Strike was 1, Tim Corrigan was 2, the 2 Grogans was 3, myself was 4. I'm short of a 5. Pat Grogan pulled out his fiddle. Oh, Patty can sing like the loon. Hauled the bow down across the middle and give out with a bit of a tune. Himself round the kitchen went dancing. Such a tune as Pat Grogan can play. The 5 of us were singing and dancing. And who was the 5, did you say? Well, Tim Corrigan was 1. The 2 Grogans was 2. Myself was 3. Mike Strike was 4. Jesus, I'm short of stuff. Anyway, it was early daylight in the morning when the party at Grogan's broke up. The cock in the shed crowed a warning, and we each took 1 round of the cup. But the finest of friends must be parted, so we each went our own separate ways. The 5 of us were laughing and ever so joyful. But who was the 5? Say now myself, I know if I was there for sure. Mike Strike was 2, Tim Corrigan was 3, the 2 Grogans was 4, 2, 3, 4. I guess there was only 4. Now before I get Aiden up again, I'd like to give you a little song, And this is another one of those songs that a couple of things needed to happen before I could actually put it to a song. And one of them was that there the other year there was a circus down in Cincinnati, And when the circus finished up in St. Anthony, you know, with circus animals and the whole shebang, and they were on their way back up towards Deer Lake, and when they got to Daniels Harbour, one of the trucks broke down. And apparently it was something serious because they had to send off to the mainland to get a part flown in for the truck. And of course, you know, they couldn't leave these animals sort of locked up in trucks and all that sort of thing. So they had to let them go and you know, wander around St. Anthony. So the good people of St. Anthony or Daniels Harbour woke up one morning and looked out through the window and saw all these exotic circus animals going around. So that's one side of the story. The other side was that I got a brother who lives in Bay Verde, and him and his buddy Wish had a moose license for the Northern Peninsula that year. And so they set off to go down the coast. They went down, I think, about 3 times before, and they never found a moose, first or last. I mean, you know, the place is swarming with them. So I took those put those two things together and tried to come up with a sort of a plausible explanation for why the boys never got their moose on the coast that week. Now, I call it the Daniels Harbour Breakdown because that's where the truck broke down. It's also the name of a tune that I learned from the late Rufus Skincher, but it's not that tune. So here. When I got me moose license, got it in the mail, was up in Area 3, served down the Viking Trail. Even though it was far away, we didn't really care, so we loaded up to pick up with some grub and lots of beer. Seen a lot of mooses, we were driving through the park, got to Daniels Harbour just a little after dark. Thought we'd spend the night there, a beer and a bite to eat, before we went into the woods to get our winter's meat. Now when I awoke in the morning, me head was kind of sore. There was an alligator come a-crawling across the floor. I looked in through the window, and what do you think I saw? But a tiger with the polar bear, they shook each other's paw. Managed to find me glasses and I perched it on my face. The tortoise and the hare were just about to start the race. I couldn't believe me eyes, sir, I gave a little squeal. And then I seen an elephant running across the field. I thought I was a goner, that I was going crack. Then I seen the camel with the hump up on his back. It's true, oh, it's true, sir, I would not tell a lie. Go down to Daniels Harbour and you see so well as I. I went to get me shotgun, I left it in the cab. A monkey in the parking lot was boiling up some crab. I looked into the pickup where we had left all the beer, but the cases were all empty, there was not a bottle there. Then I remembered that we got it out of brew. When the bar was closed, I went and drank another few. Before we went to sleep, sir, I know we made a plan that we kill off every single moose there was in Newfoundland. Now we've seen in Daniels Harbour every creature under the sun, but was moose that we were looking for, we never seen a one. I really can't explain it, the reason can't be found. If it was anywhere else, I'd argue that the circus had come to town. Now the season's over for another year. Never got me moose, but I'm waiting on the beer to me or in the Daniels Harbour down the northern Penn. I won't be going moose hunting on the coast again. Daniels Harbour. All right, I'd like to invite Aiden Moriarty back to the stage here now. And who knows where he's going to come from this time? And Aiden, now I should use this mic over here. There's a camera there, but it's a big Facebook stream here, so they want to hear you this time.
Jesus, I lose my pants. Go, go. Hang on now. There you go, there we got her. Which one? This one? This one? That one?
No.
This one?
Yeah.
Sure, that one? No, this one. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
The one I'd like to do for you now, might sound a little bit grimy, but the ending will make you laugh. I hope. This one was written by the late, great poet Robert W. Service, who was born in England, moved to Canada, and ended up in the Yukon just after the gold rush. And he wrote many books, many poems, and ballads. This one is called Blasphemous Bill. And by the way, you know how cold it is here, eh? Enough to freeze you here, my son. 69 below here this morning. Hey, boy. I took a contract to bury the body of blasphemous Bill Mackay. Whenever, wherever, or whatsoever the manner of death, he died. Whether he died by the light of day, or under a pig-faced moon, in cabin or dance hall, camp or dive, mucklucks or patent shoon, on velvet tundra or virgin peak, by avalanche fang or claw, in Muscat Hollow or canyon gloom, by glacier drift or draw, by battle, murder, or sudden wealth, by pestilence, hooch, or lead. I swore on the book that I would follow and look till I found my tombless dead. For Bill was a dainty kind of cuss, who was mighty soft and a dinky patch with flowers and grass, in a civilized boneyard lot. And where he died, or how he died, it didn't matter a damn, so long as he had a grave with frills and a tombstone epigram. So I promised him, and he paid the price in good Shishako pine, which I blowed in that very night down at the Tenderloin. Then I painted a 3-foot slab of pine. Here lies poor Bill Mackay. Then I hung it on my cabin wall, and I waited for Bill to die. Years passed away, and at last one day came a native with a story strange of a long deserted line of tracks way back at the Bighorn Range, of a little hut by the Great Divide, and a white man stiff and still, lying there by his lonesome self. And I figured it must be Bill. So I thought of the contract I had made with him, and I took down from the shelf the swell black box with the dinky plate he'd picked out for himself. And I filled it up with grub and hooch, and I slung it on my sleigh. Then I harnessed up my team of dogs and was off at the dawn of day. You know what it's like in the Yukon wild when it's 69 below and the ice worms wriggle their purple heads through the crust of the pale blue snow, when the pine trees crack like little guns in the silence of the woods, and the icicles hang down like tusks under the parka hood, when the stovepipe smoke breaks sudden off, and the sky is weirdly lit, and the careless feel of a bit of steel burns like a red-hot spit, when the mercury's a frozen ball, and the frost fiend stalks to kill. It was just like that day I set out to look for Bill. Oh, the awful hush that seemed to crush me down on every hand as I blundered blind with a trail to find through that blank and bitter land, half dazed, half crazed in the winter wild, with its grim heartbreaking woes and the rootless strife for grip on life that only the sourdough knows. North by the compass, north I pressed, and river and peak and plain passed like a dream I slept to lose, but I wake to dream again. And river and plain and mighty peak. And who could stand on odd? As their summits blazed, you could stand on days at the foot of the throne of God. North, north, through a land accursed, shunned by the scouring brutes. But all I heard was my own harsh words and the whine of the Malamutes. Till at last I came to a cabin squat, built in the side of a hill. I burst in the door, and there on the floor, frozen to death, lay Bill. Ice, white ice, like a winding sheet, sheeting each smoke grim wall. Ice on the stovepipe, ice on the bed, ice streaming over all. Sparkling ice on the dead man's chest, glittering ice in his hair, ice on his fingers, ice in his heart, ice in his glassy stare. Hard as a log, and trussed like a frog, with his arms and legs outspread. I gazed at the coffin I brought for him, and I gazed at the gruesome dead. And at last I spoke. Bill liked his joke, but still, God darn his eyes. A man had ought to consider his mates in the way he goes and dies. Now, have you ever stood in an Arctic hut in the shadow of the pole with a little coffin 6x3 and a grief you can't control? Have you ever sat by a frozen corpse that looks at you with a grin and that seems to say, you may try all day, but you'll never jam me in? Now, I'm not a man of the quitting kind, but I never felt so blue as I sat there gazing at that stiff and studying what I do. Then I rose and kicked off the husky dogs that were nosing around the moat, and I lit a roaring fire in the stove, and I started to thaw Bill out. Well, I thawed and thawed for 13 days, but it didn't seem no good. His arms and legs stuck out like pigs, as if he was made of wood. At last I said, it ain't no use. He's froze too hard to thaw. He's obstinate, and he won't lie straight. So, I guess I got the saw.
Oh, no.
So, I sawed off poor Bill's arms and legs, and I laid him snug and straight in that small black box with the dinky plate he picked out for himself. And I came nigh near to shedding a tear as I nailed him safely down. Then I stowed him away in my Yukon sleigh, and I started back to town. So I buried him as the contract was, in a narrow grave and deep, and there he lies waiting the great cleanup when the judgment sluice head sweep. And I smoke my pipe, and I meditate by the light of the midnight sun. And sometimes I often wonder if they was the awful things I done. And as I sit and the parson talks, expounding of the law, I often think of poor old Bill and how hard he was to saw.
That reminds me of a story that Rufus Ginsburg told me one time. He was a contemporary of Nurse Bennett on the coast, and he told me that one time he helped her amputate a man's leg in a cabin down by Spirity Cove. They're just north of Belbers, and all they had was a handsaw and a bottle of rum. So it's not that far fetched. Aiden is telling you. Now, I had a word with Michelle there just before Aiden started, and turns out she's still here and up for doing another story. So I'd like to bring Michelle back now before we get to Dave. Michelle Clemens.
So I thought I'd end with a lighter note. Okay. So I'm still going to take you back to time, but not so far ago, probably the late 80s, early 90s. So I was a teacher once upon a time, not a physics teacher or anything like that. I was a theater arts teacher. Yes. So here. Yes. So I got to take you to spring, and you know what happens in spring, right? You know how high school students start to wander after the May 24th weekend, right? But there were grade 12s in my theater arts class that actually had to have the credit. And so they were pretty desperate to graduate high school, and theater arts was, some loved it and some not so much. So this time I let them all pick their own groups, die with your friends or succeed with your friends, we were going for it. And it was in an era when the VHS video recorder came in. Remember those things? Like, and you had one, the school had one. So there was no editing involved. You had to plan moment by moment, and everybody got one day of the week. So I had 5 groups, Monday to Friday. We were going to do it. So anyway, every classroom has a crowd of boys, right? And there was a crowd of boys that showed up once in a blue moon and said, "Miss, what did we miss?" Right? So I had a crowd, and I said, "Okay, you're going to do what your thing is." And the rest of the people were, varying degrees of eager on this. So I said, write what you know, make a film, make a plan, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, each person recorded, each group recorded their movie. So Monday came around, and I was in my classroom, and I get a page to the main office. Miss Clemens, could you go to the main office, please? Send your break. And down I marched all the way from one row to another. We spanned quite the block there. And I arrived at the main office, and there was my group of students, one of the groups lined off, sat in rows waiting to go in the principal's office. And I was like, what happened? Why are you here? Miss, I think we're in big trouble. I said, what happened? So he said, I don't know, like sort of dragged us in from all the hallways. I said, well, what are you doing? And so this young man stood up, and he was in a yellow one-piece with stockings and his sister's tutu. And he had a long red cape on the back, and it was covered in condoms that he got from Planned Parenthood, and he had stapled them onto his cape. Okay? So I was like, well, you can't be stapling condoms onto your cape. You got to go around now, find everybody you gave a condom to, because, he was Captain Condom, safe sex for all at the school. So he was, going around there recording them, and they were doing an educational safe sex video, right? That's a good thing. Except they had staples in them. So I said, you gotta go around and collect all these condoms, okay? So meanwhile, the door to the office of please. So I go in. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. He said, you should be sorry. And I said, yes, because now we've got to find the 25 kids who got the condom that's blood. And he goes, oh, that's the only issue you see? Yeah, well, so what about the young men? Does he do all? So, well, they have to write about what they know. And so he just sort of, okay, and said, okay, well, yes, collect the condoms and please get them in some other clothes. We are talking, the late 80s here, folks. Okay, so on we go, and the next day, nothing happened. Wednesday, same thing, the page, Miss Clemens, was going to do anything on the sleeves? And on I go, down to the main office, and once again, they're lined up there, right about the office. Miss, please, we're in so much trouble. Oh my God, can you get us out of this? And so sure enough, office door opens. And in I go in, and there on the principal's desk, lined up, was every bottle known to man that was out. You know, there was vodka and rum and whiskey and wine and beer all lined up at the end of the desk. And he said, "Explain this." Bottles rattling out of lockers, spreading all over the floor during first lunch, and class is disrupted. And I go, "Well, it's a Mothers Against Drunk Driving video, right? That's a good thing, isn't it? You know, Mothers Against Drunk Driving." He said, "Yes," but he said they were rattling all over the floors. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "It's a video project, you know. They're all trying to graduate high school." And all he said was, "When will this end?" Those were the days when policies were a lot looser than they are now. Anyway, so I said, Friday. Friday's the last day, and nothing's going to happen on Friday because, you know, it's the boys, and I haven't seen them in a week. And he said, "Are you sure that's good news?" Anyway, so Thursday went fine, Friday arrived, and I didn't get a page that day. There's a teacher arrived at my door, my classroom, and said, "You need to go to the office right now." Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I go to the office right now, and all of the boys are all lined up for the office, and they are shit-baked. They're shit-baked. There's people sweating, clothes are being tugged at, and they go, Miss, you gotta cover us. Oh my God, Miss, you gotta cover us." I said, "What do you mean cover you? What am I gonna cover you for?" I said, "I'm seeing you in a week and a half." And he said, "Oh, Miss Mom, we're in so much trouble. You said there's 3 of us on probation." And I'm going, "How does that matter?" "Oh, just then the door of the office opened and out walked a police officer." So, "Miss Clemens, could you please come into the office?" You know, I went to the office. "Hi, officer, we're going to go today." And he said, "Is there a movie project?" "Yes, there's a movie project." "Have you approved this movie project?" "Yes, I've approved the music project, but I haven't seen the script." "And how did you get involved?" And he said, "Well, ma'am," he said, "we got a call." I said, "What's that?" He said, "We got a call that a store just down the road was being held up at gunpoint." Did I forget to mention about the sign that says "Filming in Progress"? Anyway, so it so happened that they walked into a store and they were doing a Cops and Robbers movie because, of course, they're talking about what they know. And 3 of them were on probation. So they had gone into the store with a shotgun, with the pin not longer in it, and they robbed this woman at gunpoint. But she knew, she had it all planned. They had Monopoly money and a brown paper bag, and everything was working out fine. Until some guy came in, scratching his arch, rubbing his eyes, thinking the best thing you can do at 12 noon on a Friday afternoon was get a pack of smokes. And he walked into the store, into what he thought was a robbery. And he turned around and he exited home. He called the police. And those were the days when police, you know, just carried guns, and they carried a lot more in their trunk. So they sent the SWAT team. And they blocked out the whole street. And they locked down the grid on Friday afternoon at lunchtime. Anyway, so I said, "Police officer, yes, there is a movie." "Yes, I approved the movie." And I said, "Yes, it was," and he said, "Okay, we checked it out, and the store owner had a plan, and yes, you forgot to tell him to put a sign up to say film is in progress." But anyway, the good story ends quite well because the police officers were very wonderful. They didn't arrest or reach anybody's probation, and they worked together on Sunday morning to do the cops part of the robbery. And they staged it at Fort Townsend. And the following week, they all came in with their great rap song and their film all done, and the police and them working together. And one young man, as a matter of fact, entered a YTV contest for screenwriting. So there you go. That's my good news story.
All right, Michelle, thank you so much. All right, we've got Dave Moriarty coming back now, and so he'll be the last feature of the night, and then I'll be back to finish up a couple of things once Dave is done. So Dave, here he comes. Please give Dave a warm welcome back to the stage. Thank you.
I gotta say this, and what an amazing audience you've been, like, hanging on to every word, and, yeah, well done. Give yourselves a hand, well done. True story. All my stories are true. Or as Tate Patton would say, half the life, what's it? Half the lies you tell are not true. In his new book, his book. Anyway, remember earlier on I said that my mother was a staunch Roman Catholic, and we were born and raised and dragged up Catholic, right? At least the boys were anyway. Right?
Ain't that
So-
the truth?
Ain't that the truth, right? So, as a Catholic young player, and I hope not offend anybody's sensibility talking Catholics and Protestants and whatever else, but I'm not going to talk too much here to Protestants. Well, should I? I'm a Catholic, right? Anyway, as a young player growing up, as a Catholic young player growing up, other than not stealing and lying, which we got that done over in the first one, I lost that early. The other thing you had to do was go to Mass on Sunday morning. Back in the day, when I was younger, Mass was 10:30 Sunday morning, or 8 o'clock, and nobody was getting up 8 o'clock. That's not going to happen. So bad enough to drag you out at 10:30. But before that, on Saturday afternoon, you had to go to confession. Now, confession, of course, is a very Catholic thing. You know, you go and you tell all your sins to the priest, and then he intercedes with you to the big guy, and you get all forgiven, and you go to Mass on Sunday morning, which gives you Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, to commit all the sins again and go back and tell them all again next Saturday. So we're walking down the road, the boys are on this side, the girls are, because the last thing Mom said when you leave the house on Saturday morning is, don't come home if you don't go to confession. Okay, so you're going to confession, you got to go home, you got to eat somewhere, right? The girls going down one side of the road, we're going down, and we're saying to each other, what are you going to tell them? You know, you're going to tell them, well, we can't all tell them the same thing because you know we're in on it, right? Then the girls are on the other side of the road and they're saying the exact same thing. What are you going to tell them? You know, Mabel, what are you going to tell them? And Mabel says, my God, at least you can't tell them that, boy. He's a young priest. You'll burn the ears off him. So anyway, I go down and I get in the confession box and I tell it all to the priest, you know, everything I made up with the boys on the way down the road. So when I come out, he gives me a whole slew of penance, right? Now, penance is what he says after you confess your sins and you want to get absolution, then you're going to be a good boy, at least until perhaps 12 o'clock on Sunday, right? You know, until you find something else to steal or whatever. So here I am. I come out of the confession box and I got my two knees like the holy little thing I was, you know, praying me heart out. Because I mean, I got about 10 or 12 Hail Marys. I got 4 or 5 Our Fathers, and the glory be, because what I told him, he said, you got to pay for all this, right? So here I am, I'm doing like that. And I hear these two women behind me, and they say, oh yeah, that's that young Dave Moriarty, yeah. That's Aggie Moriarty's son. Yeah. Aggie's husband Jack, yeah. That's Nell Hearn is Jack's sister. Yes. And there's Nell with 4 boys and 2 priests. True story. Gospel truth. 4 boys, 2 priests. And there's Aggie Moriarty with 7 boys. And not a priest among them. So I said to myself right then and there, I was going to take control of the family name. I was going to restore honor to this family. I was going to become a priest. Right? That was it. So the first thing, in order to become a priest, I had to become an altar boy. Right? So in order to become an altar boy, you had to be good. You had to be recommended by your teachers and by the nuns and the priests and everybody else. Well, there wasn't hope in hell I was going to get it. I mean, I was done already, right? I mean, I stole enough apples and everything else around town, right? So I said, okay, I'm going to be the best I can be. So here I am. I am so good that, like, people saying something wrong with you. Right? I mean, I didn't go stealing, I didn't go cursing, I didn't go smoking, I didn't go nothing at all. I was the best I could be. And I tormented the heart out of everybody until finally the priest said, okay, you can be an altar boy. Yes. First step to be the priest, I got to be an altar boy, right? So, shows up for Mass one, was a Saturday night. I think it was Saturday night. Anyway, we're all all there. Now we got the outfits on, you know, whatever the young fellas were, red and white anyway. So we're all holier than thou. And one of the things you had to do, lay out everything, the elves and the pattern and all that stuff for the priest, make sure everything is squared away for mass. And the other thing is you had to go down and get the wine from the cellar underneath the cathedral in Harbour Grace. It's a true story, it's down there. So here I go down with 3 or 4 of my buddies. We go down, and here's the wine back right there. Now there's 2 bottles, all the rest of them are dusty. There's 2. One is cleared off, the other one, oh, that's the priest's private stash, right? So we take the bottle out that you got to bring up to give the priest for service, and then I look around and say, let's have a sip. So I take the bottle out. Now the boys are standing there with me with all the little garbs on, and they have a little mouthful, hand it around, right? Everybody have a little sip like you would. Well, you know, you never miss a slice off a cut loaf. So we go for a second round. So we did that. I was just about to go for the third round when the side door opened underneath the cathedral in Harbour Grace, and the caretaker came in. Now, down in the basement of the church in the cathedral in Harbour Grace, all the statues, because we have to big on statues, right? And if something got broke, like, okay, so here was Mother Holy Mary was down there, and she had Christ child in her arm, and she was a bit gimped up because one arm was gone, and the head was gone off baby Jesus, and Joseph was standing over in the corner, and he only had one leg under him, you know, and the other fellow was over there, and he had half his head gone. I don't know how, I mean, it must have been a big explosion or something, because we were all beat up, right? So I took a dart in behind the statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary with the baby Jesus, hold on, and half the head gone off it. And he come into the door, and he reached in, I looked down, there was a bottle of rum, because he wanted his nip too before Mass, right? So he put his hand in to get the bottle of rum, and I don't know what happened to me, but anyway, I looked down at him, and I cooped me down like that, and I grabbed him by the wrist. I didn't grab him, I just touched him very lightly, and I said, John! I said, leave here, and don't drink again! Well, he straightened up like he was gunshot, right? Up the stairs behind the altar, came out, right? And people are coming in for Mass. And here's the man come tearing up around the altar. The Blessed Virgin Mary just touched me down in the basement, or told me not to drink no more. Chaos. Up we come behind them like the little girls we were, half caught, right? Come up and sat down there. The priest had just come into the door. It was Father O'Brien then, right? He come in, and he sees the chaos going on before Mass, and he goes to me, he goes, David, he said, do you know what's going on here? No, Father. He said, you know, Tommy, do you know? No, Father. No, didn't see nothing. No, never saw nothing. He said, was anybody down in the basement? No, nobody down there. No, nobody down there. They got things squared away. Okay, we finally got things calmed down, and we got Mass underway, and there was no real big issues about it. They were sort of looking at it a bit strange, saying, how come the boys are sort of tilted off to one side, you know? One of them tilted off the other way. The other one's over there asleep, right? You know? He didn't know, of course, about the wine. So now, fast forward, 1981. I'm in the military. I never get to be a priest, okay? So you might as well get that part, right? I'm in the military, so I come home. And I've been thinking about this reunion, high school reunion and that. So when we came in the auditorium, there was a dory load of beer, a dory load. This is a Bayman's dream. This is like this is way over the top, right? A full dory full of beer, all you can suffer. And this is only Friday night. We got Friday night, we got Saturday, we got Sunday, and probably half a Monday, right before we sober up here. This is going to be like a bang up job. Right? I walk up to he's now Monsignor O'Brien. He was Father O'Brien, he's now Monsignor O'Brien. And he was having a draw, because he always had a draw. Blowing smoke everywhere, you could smoke anywhere then, right? I said, Monsignor, I said, I'd like to talk to you for a minute. He said, what's that, David? I said, you remember, I said, like way back when, about 20 odd years ago, I said, when, you know, all that racket started at that time, before Mass, and John Hogan was touched by the Blessed Virgin Mary down the basement of the church and told not to drink no more and all that stuff. Yeah, he said, I remember that very well. I said, that was me. He said, what do you mean that was you? I said, well, so I told him the story, how I ended up down there, you know, and I said, I don't know, someone grabbed hold of me, you know, and told me, no, do this, and I did it, and anyway, he said, but how do you know, he said, that the Virgin Mary wasn't interceding through you? Oh, never thought about that, right? I never thought about that. I've been carrying this load all my life, right? Never know that I had an exit man. I was too late. He said, so why are you telling me now? I said, well, Mr. Hogan's here tonight. I said, and I said, I'd like to explain to him what happened and maybe, you know, like sort of get a bit of forgiveness or something like that. He said, David, he said, that man has not had a drink in 22 years. Now, he said, you expect me to let you walk to him tonight and say, oh, it wasn't the Virgin Mary that grabbed you down in the basement of the church, it was you? He said, no, that's not going to happen. He said, here's what you're going to do. He said, you go over to the door, he said, get us a couple of beer. Oh, good enough. I said, I got this one canned. Oh, yeah. I said, I'm getting into the beer now, right, like you would. So I went over chest stock out. I'm in the military now, right? I'm not a priest, but I'm doing pretty good. And I took 2 beer and I brought them back to Monsignor O'Brien, and he took them both from me. I'm looking at him like, oh, where's mine? I said, where's mine? He said, yours. No, he said, you lied to a priest. He said, and for that, he said, you must do your penance. And he said, your penance is, he said, you will not have any alcohol tonight, tomorrow, Sunday, or Monday. And he said, maybe now, he said, that will teach you a lesson, he said, on how to behave, he said, when you're an altar boy. He said, so don't drink anything till Monday morning. And I never had a draft. And all the boys were getting loaded drunk, and I had to do my penance. That's a true story. Great audience, thank you.
Thank you, Moriarty. Thank you, Dave. All right, we're just about at the end of the evening here. I'll do a couple of short pieces for to get you out of here. But before we do that, I want to go back and just say thanks to our funders, Canada Council for the Arts, Building Communities through Arts and Heritage Program, Arts NL, City of St. John's, and the Newfoundland and Labrador Cultural Economic Development Program. Thank our sponsors, Perfect Day and PhonoMed, our partners, Cupid's Legacy Center, AC Hunter Library, The Rooms, the Ship Inn, Newfoundland Folk Arts Society, and the Cox and Palmer Second Space. And don't forget the monthly song story circle every second Wednesday of the month at the Battery Cafe at 7 p.m. I want to thank the Ship Inn for sharing this great space. There's been so much gone on here over the years. I want to thank the St. John's Storytelling for inviting me to host, and I want to say thanks to Karen and Elaine and Dave and all the folks who make not just the festival, but the other events that happen throughout the year. I want to say special thanks also to Wallace Hammond down there doing the sound. This is not Wallace's first rodeo at the Ship. I first met Wallace, I think it was back in the 1970s or something. We've both been pretty much doing the same thing ever since. I'm going to do a couple of short pieces for you. Now, one is a recitation from the late Lem Snow. And Lem, he was from Hamilton in Notre Dame Bay originally. Spent most of his working life in Howley and was a scaler for Bowater, so he worked in the woods all his life. And I used to hear about him when I was a youngster because he was probably the first person in Newfoundland to play the banjo. He played this little 4-string banjo that was always out of tune. And he used to work in the woods. My grandfather worked in the woods, and I used to hear my grandfather talking about him. But I first met him, I think it was in 1977 maybe. And the first thing he said to me, I told him, who my grandfather was and so on. And he said, you live in St. John's, do you? I said, yeah. He said, I went to St. John's one time, he said. I went all the way in, he said, from Howley on the Speeder. Now, the Speeder is one of these hand carts, That's a long haul under your own steam, right? He might have been pulling my leg. mind you. But I know for one thing, his wife Rose told me that when their first child was born, he took her to Corner Brook to the hospital on the speeder through the mountains there in the Humber Valley. I'm sure she wasn't lying because she wasn't like that. But he said, I went to St. John's one time, he said, on the speeder back in 1932, he said. And he said, I got all the way in there, he said. And wouldn't you know it, he said, there was somebody else there. I had to turn around and come back again. And that was Len. I took him to a bunch of folk festivals across the country. In Vancouver, we went down to Chinatown to a restaurant. I said, Len, we're going down to a Chinese restaurant in Chinatown. He said, well, I said, I don't think that sounds very good for me. He said, well, Len, you know, there's a billion Chinese over there. They seem to be doing pretty well eating all this stuff. So anyway, he came along and he ate more than the rest of us put together, really. But on the way down, he said, you know, he said, I don't know if he said, if it got something to do with I'm getting older. He said, well, I find I got to eat just about every day now. And he was constantly with cracks like that. But he wrote a lot of stuff, a lot of serious stuff. He was an environmentalist long before it ever became trendy. Wrote a lot about what was going on in the woods and so on. But he also wrote a lot about the seasons and the weather, like you know, a lot of us talk about. And of course, you know, here we are, 15th of October. So you know what's coming now over the next few months, don't you? And this is what Len had to say about it. When the birds have flown to a warmer clime, and the day gets dark before it's time, when the sun comes up for a very short while and you have to burn coal or imperial oil, then for added warmth you'll plug the heater as you anxiously gaze at the racing meter. Now that's a sign that winter is approaching. When the landscape looks so bleak and bare and that shimmering white looms everywhere, when you slip and sprawl as you walk along, and to keep from swearing, you will hum a song. But at last you will fall with such impact that the ice all round will shiver and crack. And as you rise and wince with pain, then with a grunt fall down again. I'll tell you boys, that's winter. When the sky above is overcast, and suddenly falls that wintry blast, when you're covered in snow from toe to head and your once pale cheeks are now rosy red, when you catch a cold from the chilly breeze, and you sniff and snuggle, cough and sneeze, when you shiver and shake despite warm clothes, and that little drop clings to your nose, I'll tell you boys, that's winter. When you sit at home where it's cozy and warm, safe and secure from the raging storm, when faintly to your ear is borne a plaintive cry from the raging storm, hark! Again comes that cry as the night winds howl. Now that's your old tomcat out on the prowl. You'll hear that too in winter. Now a change takes place and the weather gets warm. How different today from the night of the storm. One is splashed by a car, another by a truck, and soon the whole town is covered in muck. How often you will hear that expression, "You fool," accompanied by words not taught in school. You'll hear that too in winter. Now again comes a change, and with new added force, old man winter continues his uneven course. The frost and the snow make the children rejoice, for they love to play in the snow and on ice. But who can predict what the future portends? So let's all be happy and nice to our friends. A few months from now, we'll have bright sunny skies with lots of warm weather and millions of flies. That won't be winter. Now, finally, I will leave you with this one. No, I've been so fortunate, really, not just in beating around the province and meeting lots of great singers, and traditional singers, players, storytellers, dancers, you name it. But, you know, I grew up with all that too. So there's never been a time really when I wasn't sitting around listening to, even growing up, you know, when I was growing up, I used to hear my father now, if my father was home on a Saturday night, there was guaranteed to be a time in our kitchen. And I'd be cooking down on the stairs trying to hear as much as possible, you know, supposed to be in bed. And you'd say, Mom, what's Dad and them up to? Oh, that's your father and them going on with your old foolishness. But of course, today they call it folklore. And it's a really big deal. I mean, you can get a degree in it now. In fact, I was talking to somebody the other day who had a master's degree in all foolishness. And I don't know how long you got to go to school to get something like that, but it's a wonderful thing. So I you know, always like to do a shout out to a lot of the people that I learned a lot of the music from. And I want to thank you folks also, of course, for being here tonight because, you know, we were going to be here anyway, so it's really great that you turned up. It would have been a bit lonely. But I was playing on the Bayward Peninsula one night down in a little place called Fleur de Lis, myself and Rufus. And there was a fellow came up from Harbour Round, a fellow by the name of Cyril Drover. And this is a piece that I learned from him. I'm going to tack one of Rufus's tunes onto it just for the hell of it, since I mentioned him a few times tonight. Called the Crooked Crab Tree. It goes like this. Here's to the crooked crab tree. Here's to the grass that grows around the crooked crab tree. Here's to the cow with the crooked horn that eats the crooked grass that grows around the crooked crab tree. And here's to the woman with the crooked arm that milks the crooked cow with the crooked horn that eats the crooked grass that grows around the crooked crab tree. Here's to the man with the crooked leg that married the crooked woman with the crooked arm that milks the crooked cow with the crooked horn that eats the crooked grass that grows around the crooked crab tree. And here's to the minister with the crooked book who married the crooked man with the crooked leg to the crooked woman with the crooked arm that milks the crooked cow with the crooked horn that eats the crooked grass that grows around the crooked crab tree. And here's to the tailor with the crooked needle, who sold the crooked suit clothes for the crooked minister with the crooked book, who married the crooked man with the crooked leg to the crooked woman with the crooked arm, the crooked cow, the crooked horn, the crooked grass goes around the crooked crab tree. Now here's to the rooster with the crooked crow, who wore the crooked tailor with the crooked needle, who sold the crooked suit clothes for the crooked minister with the crooked book, who married the crooked man with the crooked leg to the crooked woman with the crooked arm, the crooked cow, the crooked horn, the crooked grass goes around the crooked crab tree. And here's to the dog with the crooked bark, who whooped to the rooster, whooped the crooked rooster with the crooked crow, whooped the crooked tailor with the crooked needle, sold the crooked suit of clothes for the crooked minister with the crooked book, who married the crooked man with the crooked leg to the crooked woman with the crooked arm, the crooked cow, the crooked horn, eat grass, so the crooked grass rolls around the crooked crab tree. And here's to the rest of you. Thanks so much for coming out, everybody. See you again. Take care.
Thanks for coming out, everybody. On behalf of St. John's Storytelling, I just wanted to mention tomorrow at 2:30, things take a turn to the north. Joe Gowdy is here from Labrador. He's going to be talking about the Haida Landmen. These are trappers who walked about 300 miles inland before they even got to their trapping ground. And I grew up in North Australia where a lot of them lived, and I can remember some of them. So that's going to be pretty good. Joe's 83 now, but he tells a wicked story. And then in the evening over at the Cox and Palmer, Joe will be there again with Alex Saunders from Coastal Labrador, and Amelia Reimer, and also Wayne Broomfield from Makovic, who I think is going to tell a story about a rescue he did for a bunch of National Geographic photographers who were in the Torngats and thought they could set up their camp near some polar bears one night. And it's a hair-raising story, literally and figuratively. So I don't know for sure if he's going to tell that one, but I think maybe he is. Anyway, Wayne has been all over the Arctic and Antarctic, and he has some fascinating stories. So I hope you come and join us for tomorrow, because it'll be good. All right, good night. Thanks for coming out.